Welcome to your weekly astrological weather. This is your place to get practical guidance for not only surviving, but thriving with the cosmic tides. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to your weekly astrological weather. I am so happy to be here with all of you. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for joining. And I'm thrilled to be here with Andrea Michelle Kennedy. Andrea Michelle is an astrologer. She has been a previous Inner Circle astrologer, so a teacher and a guide for us in the Inner Circle. She also currently is working on our Astrologer Connect reading platform, which is in beta, so only the Inner Circle members even know about it yet. And then one of the things that Andrea Michelle likes to focus in her work, and what she's going to be doing here with all of us today, is helping people prepare for the challenges of the unknown. And I love how you say this, Andrea Michelle. And I know that this has been a theme of the last few years. So many of us have felt, probably all of us feel there is still so much unknown, and that every day we're kind of navigating unknown and new territory. And so focusing on that and helping people with that is really quite valuable and noble of you to be doing. And so how did you get to this in your work? How did you decide this is where you'd like to focus?
Because it's something that I focus in my daily life. I do it for me. And I figure if it's something that I'm struggling with, working with, then it must be something useful for other people. And it's something that I then have a stake in the game, you could say. It's not just something that, oh, this sounds interesting and it'd be good to apply here. It's like, no, where can whatever I'm alchemizing in my life for me be of benefit in other people in the way that's unique to their wiring based on their chart, their potentials, habits, all that good stuff. So.
I love it. I love it. All right. So before we dive in, I just wanted to read a really sweet testimonial that came in about the podcast. The name I cannot even try to repeat. It's a bunch of letters, but the subject is Love It All. And this person said, "What incredible and mind-blowing insights. I love all the guests. Christopher Renstrom is my favorite. I feel like cuddling up with a pillow and blanket by a fireplace and listening to him every single night." Mm-hmm. And yes, I think many people agree. Christopher Renstrom is an amazing storyteller. If you don't tune into our Sunday horoscope highlights with Christopher, it would be a great time to check that out. It's another free offering here on the Astrology Hub podcast. And thank you so much for that review. All right. So Andrea Michelle, we are coming off the Equinox, the new moon, and looking ahead at a kind of like a new beginning sort of energy. What would you say is the overarching theme for this week?
Well, I had a hard time summarizing this one. It took me a while, but I finally came up with preparing for timeless change.
Okay.
Because I cannot. So I'm looking at this week from the perspective of the Equinox Ingress chart and this new moon that just took place on this supergalactic center, which is huge. So the supergalactic center is a massive black hole. It is larger than the black hole at the center of our galaxy, our galactic center. And so because seasonal ingress, well, before I get there, the ingress chart, where Mercury was with the sun cazimi, they're like little snapshots of time that I find are really, really helpful to put a perspective on a certain 3-month period. They help us break up the year in a way that's more bite-sized and tangible. Mm-hmm. So it lays out the terrain, and it's up to us to create the map, which is just our way of walking the terrain. So I can't ignore that. And I wanted to say a few words about the Ingress chart to bring in where I'm coming from in this whole week, from this brand newness with the Ingress and the new moon.
Okay. So Andrea, I don't want to make the assumption that everyone knows what the word ingress is, because I think it was probably like 4 years into my studying before I finally figured out what you all meant by ingress.
Right. Perfect. So it's basically the chart that maps when, it can be anything, but in this case, it's when the sun entered Libra, 0 Libra, to mark the equinox, right? So it sets the stage for the whole fall or spring season, depending on what hemisphere we're in. So it's the whole flavor of what the season, the encapsulating themes of the season are for us, basically.
And an ingress it's basically when any planet shifts into a new zodiac sign.
It can.
Correct?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. You can use an ingress chart even for, I did it with my Venus group. We did an ingress chart for when Venus went into the underworld. So it can be anything. It's like a portal. It acts as something of a portal to encapsulate a specific time and the significance of that time and how we can use the energies.
Oh, I'm so glad I asked. See, you just added another dimension to even my understanding. I thought it was when it shifted into a new sign, but you're saying an ingress is any sort of delineation, like any delineation between where one was and where the next phase is.
It could be. I mean, it's maybe it's not traditionally used that way, but I use it because I find it very, very helpful in my work.
Okay, perfect. All right. So we have this ingress of the sun moving from Virgo into Libra, also marking the equinox.
Yes.
And then we have also the new moon that happened yesterday. So you're saying preparing for timeless change. Why do you say timeless change?
Because there's so much happening in this next 3 months. And again, we're talking about the 3 weeks, or the next week. But this is the beginning of, we're going to have Venus with the sun and her superior conjunction coming up at the end of October. Mars in his opposition to the sun also at the end of October. And there's just this whole, and then we have Mercury right here in the ingress chart with the sun. He's moving the fastest that he moves in his cycle, close to the earth, but there's this balance. There's a sense of balance. So for me, this whole preparing for timeless change is to discover where and to prepare ourselves for where we can be the eye of the storm, basically. When things are moving really, really fast, where can we find our balance? Where can we find what keeps us stable? Where things are still happening, we don't have to, be completely in witness consciousness, zen out or anything. We're still in the thick of it, but where in us can we stabilize so that we can be the space in which this stuff can happen? We don't take it personally, but we make use of it in the best way to go forward.
So you're anticipating almost like an acceleration of change?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Well, let's start talking about the astrology then. How are you getting here? And if you want to walk us through the days, we can do that.
Yeah, sure. One of the things that I wanted to first start off with is, even though we're in Libra season now, we have Mercury retrograding back into Virgo, his sign, and we have Venus still in Virgo. So there's a wrapping up element here. And the way I wrote it, is before we can get to the task of reconciling polarity outside of ourselves, Libra, we need to really reconcile it within Virgo and get accurate about what it looks like for us uniquely. So it's like we really want to remember that developing a relationship starts inwardly before it can really manifest outwardly. And we've been so outward valenced in our culture that we really, really forget to take the time to really, really tend to our own relationship with ourselves, our inner relationship.
We talked about that a lot at the Inner Circle new moon forecast, this idea of the sacred mirror in relationship and how often we're projecting outside of ourselves the things that we really need to see inside ourselves.
Yes.
Do you feel like, would it be a good practice right now, because there's so much of this, like, okay, pay attention to what outside of you need to see within you.
Yes.
anytime we're feeling like, oh gosh, I hate when so-and-so does this, or I'm so frustrated with this, or I'm really disappointed in this, it's like almost every time we come to that thought pattern to turn it around and say, how am I doing that to myself? How am I disappointing myself? Where am I not showing up for myself?
Yeah.
Is that a type of practice we could be doing right now that gets us ready for this?
Very good. Yes. And the thing with Virgo, because it's Virgo energy we're talking about, especially with Mercury retrograde and Venus there could be a self-abnegation or a shaming that can be prominent. So how do we stay in this place of where is this come back to me, but with love, Venus, with heart, with being able to be the vessel, the container where we can be accurate, Virgo, without shaming or making ourselves wrong. And so this is the fine balance that we're learning, is the inner relationship of where can I be honest with myself and hold kindness. Balance of the Virgo and Pisces polarity.
It's so good. I find one of the ways to do that for myself, at least, is to find a little bit of humor in it. And also there's times where when I see it, it's like, oh, okay, that's really cute that you're doing that. That's really cute and funny. And it's time to be done with it. I mean, one example recently that feels really present is I have noticed someone very significant in my life overextends themselves for other people and is putting themselves last on the priority list. And it's very easy for me to see, right? But then a few days ago, I totally threw out my back and I was like basically immobile. And it was this moment of like, oh my God, I am doing the same thing. I am completely doing the same thing. And I haven't been seeing it in myself. It's so easy to see in that other person. But I've been sitting in this chair for the last 3 years that I've known is horrible for my back, but it has been the last priority. And finally, it's like my back gives out. It's like, are you going to pay attention to taking care of yourself so you can continue showing up for other people? Right?
Good. Yes. Because otherwise it perpetuates this whole martyrdom complex.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes.
I need to constantly serve. And then there's a self-abnegation piece there that doesn't help anybody. And it just foments resentment. And, I loved what Michelle Dench had said, I don't know, a month or so ago about Virgo, which is so underrated and so underappreciated, the sign of Virgo. But she's like, she talked about attending to what we can attend to in the moment. And we're so outward focused about achieving and getting. And Chiron in Aries is really, for me, showing us how we've exhausted that going out to do rather than the coming in and consolidating with what's already here. Because we can't really go forward with any kind of assurance that we're heading in the right direction if we haven't come up with let ourselves catch up to ourselves, which for me is what retrograde planets do. So we still have Saturn retrograde squaring the nodes, and we have, of course, Mercury retrograde. So there's this very, very strong, again, invitation to let ourselves catch up with our thought patterns, how we want to, where we're veering off into choosing the past, Scorpio South node, and staying hidden or entrenched in, I don't want to change, versus moving into the unknown Uranus North node, right? Where change is a constant. The unknown and the uncomfortable is actually going to be the new norm. And here's the thing, that's the beautiful thing is, well, not so beautiful or comfortable necessarily, but this is just the law of life. This is natural law, that change is inevitable. The I Ching is all about, it's the book of change. So everything in this period, still with this wrapping up, this cardinal agency of Libra can't really be taken and moved ahead with until really we internalize and not make personal, but just make intimate Venus, what is still ours to attend to. And again, to get back to the new moon that just happened on the super galactic center, the astrologer Philip Sedgwick wrote a beautiful article on this, if anybody wants to look this up. But because it's a super massive black hole, and it's in Libra longitudinally, there's this tendency of like this drawing out to extremes, our reliance on other to serve our needs, to be everything for us, everything that we don't want, everything that we need to other, both the projections of what we don't like and the projections of what we feel we need. And this whole period of the next few months is going to stretch us into some really, really strong polarizations in order to help us come back to center, to snap back to center in a way. And so again, hence the preparing for timeless change. Things are moving fast. Things are going to be increasingly polarized in the world. So how do we work with the energy and allow the tension to show us where we're still gripping and holding on? Because Virgo can very much be about where I don't want to be, what I want to control change, mutable, right? So it can, and again, the Mercury going retrograde, how am I still in control and using my thoughts to control my environment? And my thoughts can't take me where I really need to go. They are limited. And as long as we stay in our heads and not go into our bodies, which Mercury retrograde closest to the Earth, Virgo is also an Earth sign. We tend to, most of us default to the air portion of the Virgo. It's so important to come back into our bodies and allow that to be our way forward, Taurus North Node, listening to the new information that's coming in through our bodies.
Andrea, how do you, so the change thing and getting used to change and being in that flow of change, and in some ways welcoming it, right?
Yeah.
When there's things in your life that you love, when there's things in your life that you cherish, and there's things in your life that you're like, God, I really don't want this to change. This is perfect. I love this.
Right.
How do you manage that like tension?
Awesome. Well, what I have to do is I remind myself that if I'm gripping on something, that means that it's not in the ultimate best interest of what my true, authentic wants, needs, desires are. Because the desire of life is to continually discover itself anew in its own expression unique to us. And so when we're grasping on something, it's an indication that we're playing small, that we're not really making room for something else to come in, which the change is really mirroring for us. So if we can take a breath, allow the dissolution of the mutable elements to go and work with the natural cycles of life. Ceres is also this week she's moving into Virgo, and she's so much about where we can really be attached to not wanting change. But at the same time, she's the initiatrix. She's really about going deeply into where we haven't wanted to go, have our human initiations in order to become more of the vessel, Virgo, to receive the love and light and truth of Pisces. So, and we have both Mercury and Venus coming into opposition with Neptune retrograde during the course of this week. So it's really kind of like, where are we still controlling on our version of the truth to reify a self-image? And it can be even to continue to make myself wrong because somehow I'm identifying with being the one who's always got to prove myself, to work really, really hard. That's a Virgo trait too. Overworking, really, really not allowing ourselves any rest. So where are we able to dissolve Neptune, some of the gripping, so that we can, and remember that while the discomfort is happening, if we are presencing to it, we are much more able to allow the wisdom of our bodies to transmute, to engender a new flow of life force in us when we get out of our heads to explain what's happening and deep into our direct experience, because that's where we let go of our heads and entrust our wisdom, which we cannot know And so hence a lot of the unknown is we don't really know how to trust ourselves. Scorpio South Node. We're really, there's suspicion. There's, I don't know if I can trust you, which is another way of saying I don't trust myself in the places where I'm not trusting you. That mirror thing again, right? So where can we go into the unknown of maybe the discomfort is my teacher. And the more that we actually consciously venture there, consciously choose to work with the discomfort rather than trying to find panaceas or ways to get out of it, we are emboldening ourselves and empowering ourselves in the change. Change doesn't go away, but we become now more able to, again, find our center, and it becomes easier over time. It's habit, which is another Virgo thing. Developing strong habits that help to center us and keep us stable in and trusting in our bodies that we have the unique capacity to have everything we need to build relationship from there.
It's so good, Andrea. Thank you. Great answer to my question. And I think that the more often we do it, like the more we make the habit of trusting our bodies and trusting that we'll have what we need and we'll know what we need to know when we need it.
Yeah.
The more we exercise those muscles and actually do it, the more confident we can get in our ability to navigate the unknown and to navigate the different changes that are inevitably going to be coming up in our lives forever.
Forever. Yes. Forever. And one thing to just put a fine point on is like, we don't have to like any of it. There's no rule that says I have to go through these really hard times with a smile on my face and pretend like I'm all good with it. No, the very, very human element of us is to be honest with myself that I don't have to like it, but that doesn't mean that I'm not still going to be kind with myself and go through it anyway. It's the self-honoring that is part of the self-honesty. That is part of the empowerment that actually is the doorway to more truth.
Wow. You're speaking poetry.
Oh.
It's so beautiful. Okay. So, but we've sort of, I feel like we've gotten a good smattering of what's happening this week. And if we can go through systematically all the days, then I think we can start to track it a little bit more.
Awesome. Okay. Perfect. So we have on Monday, we have, let's see, Venus and Mercury retrograde meet up at 26 Virgo. And they're actually, even though they're conjunct, they're on opposite sides of the sun in a sense. Mercury is closest to Earth. Venus is getting farthest from Earth. So that's an interesting thing to consider too. Mercury is literally transmitting to us directly from the sun to the Earth. He's the intermediary. So there's like these new codes coming in on Monday to help us with, if we know how to attune ourselves and listen in our bodies to what's uniquely ours to move forward with in these times. So Mercury is transmitting new rules of engagement and polarity to Venus. And with this Jupiter-Sun opposition, which also happens today, there is a shift in a maturation from morning star to evening star with Jupiter. So we can choose to trade in belief for faith, because belief requires an investment in something outside of ourselves. Faith implies that we already have what it takes to achieve something, and we're developing that faith. So whatever energy we've been devoting to finding a belief in something and holding on to that maybe too tightly, the more we can let go of that through the mutable energy, the more we are able to allow for a faith to be developed, for that same energy to be worked in and grounded in a faith in ourselves. So Jupiter is very high and bright in the sky, illuminating that when we have faith and trust in ourselves in the new unknown territory of our other yet to be, we discover we have everything we need and every blessing to free ourselves from limiting conceptualizations of what an I is. I also see it as this Jupiter opposition to the sun as a remembering that fulfillment of our individual purpose often requires partnering with others. Because Chiron, it's also in Aries, can present a subconscious belief structure that we need to go it alone.
Can it also be that we are alone? Like just that belief that no matter who's around us, no matter how many people are around us, no matter how many people love us and are there to support us, we still feel alone.
Very good. Yes. And that's a complex that is for safety. It's still there. And that's something to tend very, very lovingly around. Chiron, we won't go into Chiron here, but there's such a holographic intelligence in the wound of Chiron. That's for a whole other topic. But it needs to be tread very, very lovingly with devotion and an honoring. It's not something that's a quick fix by any means. So
does it ever get fixed?
No, exactly.
It
doesn't, and it shouldn't, because then we're losing the opportunity for the wisdom that it holds. Yeah. To even, it's like it's perpetuating the wound to believe that anything needs to be fixed in the first place.
Okay. Whoa. Good.
Great question. Yes. So it's a good day on Monday to take some deep breaths, watch out for anything personally, and engage spiritual practices that align with support of seen and unseen to find balance in the rapid change that's coming. So we have on Tuesday, the 27th, Pallas Athena is with Black Moon Lilith retrograde on Alhena, which is a fixed star, which is the foot of Pollux in the twin constellation. So it's heightening a moon applying to a T-square with Pluto and opposing Ingress. So the moon is moving quickly, so we might not feel this as much unless we're super sensitive, because it's the moon with these two outer planets. And again, with the quick movement of the moon, it could be just a blip on the screen, right? But there is a subtle energy or undercurrent of where we might be perpetuating divisiveness as a means to continue subtle blaming of others, where we aren't ready or willing to take accountability for ourselves yet. So with Pallas Athene, with Black Moon Lilith retrograde here, there's a heightening of this energy. Alhena is about a choice point. It's about getting off the fence. And with Pallas and Black Moon Lilith retrograde there, I see it as an opportunity to address where we've precluded vulnerability from warriorship. Pallas Athena was the goddess of strategizing in battle. She wasn't a warrior herself in terms of fighting, but she's an ultimate strategist. So how do we strategically manipulate to avoid vulnerability, which again is very much a moon, Cancer, and Chiron type of energy. Warriorship, I love this quote. Warriorship refers to realizing the power, dignity, and wakefulness that are inherent in all of us as human beings. That's a quote from one of my favorite teachers. Okay, so then we have Wednesday, the 28th, Mars trining Saturn retrograde, garnering support and strength for the journey ahead, because as we remember, Mars is going to station retrograde on October 30th. And that's going to be a whole period of, again, increased potential polarization, but also so much of a learning Gemini potential. So Saturn retrograde supports an individuating quality. Any planet retrograde supports a real, so the discomfort of the turning inward, if we use that too, remember, it's a self-initiation potential here. We can really orient to the energy so much differently. So with the trine here of Mars and Saturn retrograde, we may receive glimpses or premonitions of the future role of the individual as cultural change agent. So instead of needing to fight against, we stand for. So this is, again, Mars not in his Aries energy, but Mars more in his Scorpio energy, using that vitality to stand in, to allow transformation to happen. Okay.
That's like that Mother Teresa quote, I think it is, where she was invited to an anti-war protest and she said that she won't attend an anti-war protest, but she will attend a peace protest or
Oh,
a peace stand, or, something for peace, but she was
right.
not going to go to an anti-war. She wanted to be for something which was for peace.
Beautiful. Because all we're doing then, even if our cause is noble or good, we're still perpetuating the same against anti-dynamic.
Right.
I'm glad you brought that in. Exactly. So instead of perpetuating an anti-something, it's just standing in what I believe, standing in what is true, and then being willing to see if it's actually still true. That's the thing that's the difficult part, right?
Yes.
So later in the day, the waxing crescent moon will pass the South Node in Scorpio. So opposing Taurus North Node and trining Black Moon Lilith. So we're still in an intermediate space and susceptible to falling backward to the past, as our journey to individuation is really still new. We're at the very beginning of the lunation still. So this is with the caveat on what I wrote about Mars, especially as the ruler of the South Node. Like Mars, if we use that Saturn retrograde energy, trining Mars for seeing where we've been to tell us where we potentially need to make adjustments and empower ourselves for the change agent of the future, or where we might get even more succumbed to remembering or going back to the past, Saturn retrograde, and using that as the springboard for where we're going. It's all on how we're using the energy and how our discernment comes into play on Wednesday. Okay. So I wrote, it's a good day to watch our thinking and catch up where we may be giving up in any way on changes we previously were enthusiastic or looking to make. Where are we giving up too soon?
I was just thinking about what you said about where are we giving up too soon, and thinking about times where I've done that. And usually it's because I had an expectation that was unrealistic. And because I didn't meet that expectation, I dubbed the whole thing as a failure.
Yes.
And so then I gave up. But there's sometimes time gives us this perspective, looking back at some of the things I've given up on because I didn't think it was good enough, and I didn't think I was accomplishing things fast enough, or it wasn't hitting some very unrealistic threshold. I can look back now and say, wow, it actually was doing really well. I just didn't have context. I didn't realize that it takes a lot of time to do the kind of thing I was trying to do. So I think just remembering that we often give up on ourselves because we're comparing ourselves to other people and holding ourselves to some sort of bar that may or may not be worthy of existing, that bar.
It's beautiful. And then that perpetuates this dualistic, it's either or. It has to be this or that. And
yes.
There's no room in between then, right? Because it's like, oh, this didn't work out as I wanted it to. I'm wrong. I did it bad. Rather than, oh, well, what if it's just a slight adjustment? It's totally. Like so this time, again, beautiful, because this polarization is something to notice, is where do I go? Do I go into the opposite? Oh my God, I did so bad. Now I need to really just not ever do this again, because that's perpetuating this polarity, this dualistic thinking, where can I soften and rethink Mercury retrograde? Wow, how am I adjusting, or how am I approaching this? Maybe it doesn't have to be like 100% I give up on this, but where is a minor adjustment all that's needed? And try it again. Yeah.
I love that. Yes.
I brought that up. So Thursday, as Ceres enters Virgo, she's on the heart of the lion, Regulus, which is in the constellation of the lion. And she's considered in modern times a co-ruler of Virgo, one of them. And she's also, I find her an initiator, very much like Mercury and Chiron, both of which also have a resonance with Virgo in some way. Some people view Chiron as a potential other ruler of Virgo, but I consider Virgo the sign of the initiate. And for each decan, I have a different perspective of what each of the decans do. But for me, the very first one that Ceres is entering is about relinquishing. Relinquishing what? Relinquishing expectations, relinquishing where we might be perseverating on change and anxiety producing self-abnegating potential realities that haven't even manifested yet, to stay present, to really, really tend to the moment. So relinquishing, laying down the burden that Virgo so often carries, right? And the word relinquish conveys the notion of undoing or backward. And here we have Mercury retrograding backwards in Virgo. So it means again, back, anew, against. So a new view of initiation. And it might not be as bad as we think it is. It might actually be for our own good. All these changes, all these things that are happening, to rework and review to see these challenges and obstacles as potentials for initiation.
Andrea, I used the word initiation to a friend the other day, and she didn't know what I meant by it. So again, I don't want to assume that everybody knows what you mean by that term initiation. What is that?
An initiation is any kind of threshold where, in order to achieve or gain something, we need to let something go. That's just the rule of life, right? In order for any kind of lasting change to take place, we need to willingly be available to say, I'm giving up this in order to gain that. It's like, it's just, and what we're giving up really is just a belief system, a self-identity structure, a clinging to something, which again, like I mentioned earlier, might just be what's keeping us small and we don't know it yet. But we don't like to let go of something until we are assured of something in the future, but there are no guarantees. So the trusting in, the letting go, even if it's a little bit of a time, of our strong grip on what we've known, we start to develop that faith. And again, everything this week is really, really supporting us into letting go of the need to know, to strengthen faith. And that is part of it. That is a really good tool on the initiation journey. So the initiation is like the hero's journey is an initiation. An initiation into more of our fullness, of our beingness.
Okay. Thank you for that.
No, great. So Venus is also moving into Libra on Thursday, which is one of her domains, right? So she's going to be where Mercury was with the sun at the Libra Equinox. So we're still surrendering into the unknown before her meeting with the sun on the 22nd at the last degree of Libra. So she's the beginning of Libra, and she's going to have her meeting with the sun at the last degree. So there's this whole thing too in this week around, or this whole next 3-month period around beginnings and endings, polarities. We have that with Mercury at the end of the week, which I'm going to get to in a little bit. So I like to think of the word refinement when I think of Libra, right? And to refine is to bring or reduce to a pure state or a condition as full as possible. So it's bringing to a condition of purity, refinement. So again, we have this kind of like leaving Virgo to refine. We refine ourselves internally before we can refine our exterior environment, Libra. Because Libra is often associated with aesthetics, beautifying our environment, this type of thing, right? So I know that we're running out of time, but so coming into an opposition with Jupiter retrograde, Venus is coming into an opposition. We have an opportunity to see clearly where our beliefs have been polarizing us and what beliefs we are ready to drop, asking us to refine our ability to receive what has seemed other or foreign to us, may just give us the most direct access to our true path. And I wanted to just make a point here that receptivity is an active participatory choice. It's not passive. So it's a good day to be aware of and question our assumptions around others. Always a good day for that.
Yeah. I recently had someone, I was in a conversation with them. And to me, I said, well, what I just said is the truth. And the person said, well, that's your truth, but it's not my truth. And I went, oh yeah. And it sent me on this whole cascade of asking different questions instead of assuming that the way I was seeing it was the only way to see it.
Right.
And those other questions revealed an opening or receptivity to actually hear and receive what the other person's truth was. But as long as I was staunch and like, no, this is the truth, I couldn't even receive what the other person's truth was at all. There was no room.
Oh, that's so good. And this brings about the whole Virgo, Sagittarius, Pisces. It's because, we have to be willing to move outside of ourselves, Jupiter, Sag, before we can really achieve ultimate truth. We have to be able to have the willingness to surrender within ourselves to God, not something outside of ourselves. God, Goddess, whatever we want to say, is beyond our capacity to know just through our limited personality self before we can get to the ultimate truth. Yes. Yes. The willingness to move outside of what we thought we knew. So Friday is Mercury retrograde, trine Pluto retrograde. And Mercury is opposite Neptune retrograde and Quincunx Eris retrograde. So this whole constellation of aspects to me spells, there's a word that I like. It's called Schadenfreude, which is a German word. And it basically means, I don't like the thing that it means, but it means to get some sort of pleasure out of other person's misery. And we all have that, and it's not comfortable. But if there's a word for it, that means it exists, right? So the thing is, if we're keeping in mind the theme of this whole lunation, which for me is the polarizing from that, the new moon being on the supergalactic center, and this whole where we're literally going to be drawing in potentially these very polarizing scenarios with other, that there is if we don't get what we want from others when they are not fulfilling our needs the way we expect or want, then seeing their misfortune gives us pleasure. Now, again, I'm speaking to something that's like a shadow element of the human condition. But the beauty of this self-honesty piece that I've been talking about in the beginning is, where can we own that we all have a shadow and not make it personal and just let it be there? Oh, I don't have to make this a stamp of this is what I am or who I am, but this is just a part and parcel of what it means to be human. Part of the initiation is the loving self-acceptance, Virgo, of the fact that this exists. I don't have to identify with it. It exists. That drops me into a deeper capacity to hold that aspect of my shadow that before I wasn't able to hold. That's the potential here. Each time we do that in incremental pieces, we are strengthening our capacity to hold more of ourselves. There's a quote from Jung that I absolutely love. He writes, "I would rather be whole than good." Now that's a good thing for this whole Libra lunation too, right? I would rather know myself in all my shadow elements and bring them back to me and love them than continue this false Libra, oh, everything has to be perfect and harmonious and we all have to get along at the risk of not being in integrity with what's actually here. This all it needs is presencing and dropping a story around it, and where can I just be with it and not make it wrong. Not easy. This is not necessarily an easy complex, but this could come up. And again, I say this in relationship to where the new moon happened.
What's good about what you're bringing up, though, is recognizing that it is a human tendency can make it a lot less personal.
Yeah.
Because when you make it personal about yourself, then that's when I feel the shaming can come in, where it's like, geez, I shouldn't even have this part of me. I shouldn't even ever think that thought. Or then what you just described, though, is like, this is part of the human shadow. This is part of the collective shadow. Can you just be aware of it and on that level, embrace that aspect of you? And while you're doing that, you're embracing that aspect of everyone.
Very good. That's the missing piece that Virgo is so, that's the beauty and what gets misconstrued in the Virgo consciousness. Where can I make it intimate with me as me, but not take it personal? Because the more intimate I make it, and the more I do my part in transmuting it in where it lives in me. Like you said beautifully, that's my gift to the collective. And I can be doing this in my practice, going about my life. No one has to know about it. It's the perfection of, I know that I'm doing this for me, which then is my act of service. And it changes the whole definition of what service can be.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay. So does that bring us to the weekend?
It brings us to the weekend. Yeah. I mean, there's always more, but yes.
There's always a lot going on in the heavens, huh?
A lot. Yes. So Saturday is Venus waxing sesquisquare with Uranus and a waning sesquisquare with Vesta. Say that 3 times fast. So a sesquisquare, in case this might not be an aspect that a lot of people work with, it's the evolutionary intention of the sesquisquare is to shut off any hubris that comes from the trine. Because we're coming right from the trine. Before we hit the quincunx, we're at the sesquisquare. So it's meant to curb any excesses of ego from the trine, especially when it's waxing. Okay. So sesquisquares are uncomfortable. They can produce embarrassment or embarrassing situations. And Venus at this time, when this happens, is now on the supergalactic center herself. Okay. So for me, this may manifest, or I'm seeing it as this may manifest as encounters with others where we are compelled, seemingly beyond our control, to say or act in such a way that we regret it afterward. Okay. So stemming from the past traumas in social circumstances, or we could find ourselves in social or interpersonal situations that cause deep traumas to resurface, social traumas, right? So the potential available to us in such situations is the opportunity to re-experience this constellating experience in a way so that we can objectively recognize, Aquarius, that although it is uncomfortable and our head is telling us all sorts of things about how this is a dangerous situation and how awful it is, we actually have and will survive it. So just to give a really quick example, hopefully it's quick. I took an acting class for a long time recently. I showed up, and my Libra South Node was horrified because one of the exercises that we had to do was the repetition exercise, which is where you're in front of somebody and you speak the truth of whatever you're seeing in that person. And it's not always necessarily nice. And the point is that you're just broadening your range of how you can read off of somebody what's going on. And the first few times I showed up, I was miserable because I would freeze. And I would be like, I don't want to say this or whatever. And people would say, you're frozen, I'm bored, whatever. And my social trauma was so heightened. But I got to tell you, Amanda, every time I got off the class, I was like, when can I do that again? It was the most, because at that point, it seemed like I was at the point in my own personal becoming where, as challenging as it was, and as scary and anxious, and my heart was beating really fast as it was, my heart was like, this is my way through. The only way through is to have an experience of it, recognize somatically, I've survived this and I'm okay. And so what I'm saying about this situation is the more we can stay in the not knowing of what could happen as a result of staying in an openness around when this happens and not trying to go back to making meaning too quickly around it, we're allowing a space for something potentially to differently constellate in us around where this wound trauma particularly was holding space in our psyche that no longer necessarily needs to take up space the way it used to. And this is going to be an ongoing stretching and contracting and opening. It's not going to go away right away, but the more we allow for these experiences to happen and not go right back into the making meaning of the trauma response, the more we're going to have an opportunity to just like reopen to something, to new opportunities around it. So,
did it ever get easy?
Yes, it did.
Really?
Yeah, I started to really, really be good at the exercise, and I loved it. And it never stopped being scary. I never stopped like dreading it the moment I started to do it, but the fear didn't take me out anymore. I was more confident in me in finding my center to be in the experience and not listen to the fear. So this is the both and thing, that this whole polarizing thing is helping us to really, really initiate us into. Both things can be there. I can be terrified of making a choice. I can hate change and have developed the courage to do it anyway. It's not an either or thing. And we are so fixated on duality and either or.
Mm. Thank you for sharing that example. That's like a really palpable one. It's really good.
Good. Okay. So on Sunday, this whole week, Saturn is closing in on a tighter square to Uranus, right? So the past and the future are morphing and malleable. And it's the decisions that we make each moment that have a ripple effect on what opportunities show up in the future. There's so much more to be said about this, but that's all. I'm going to leave it with that. Mercury stations direct in the wee hours of the morning on Sunday. The sun is 1 degree on this day from where Mercury stationed retrograde on September 9th at 8 Libra. So highlighting the beginning and the end of the retrograde. So here we have the alpha and omega point too, just like we had with the premonitory, like Venus when she enters Libra this week at 0 Libra, and her ultimate meeting with the sun at the end of October on the 29th degree of Libra. There's beginning and endings. Again, the polarizing. This is everywhere. In the whole universe, the cosmic forces are forcing a recognition of polarity to an extreme to find, again, where we need to come into our center in order to find the place of balance between the two. Not the either or, but the both and.
It's a highly effective technique that is exposing us to.
Yes.
I remember when moving from New York, I couldn't have chosen a more polar opposite landing place than Puna on the Big Island of Hawaii. It was literally, if New York was night, this is day, or whatever polar opposite you want to describe.
Yeah.
Manhattan to Puna, Hawaii was as extreme as I could have chosen, although I didn't realize I was choosing that at the time. Mm-hmm. But it was that extreme that enabled me to see where my center is. And that for me, like is symbolized in Maui, because it is a little bit more of a central kind of energy experience. But it's like I couldn't have ever found a more center place had I not gone to the total opposite of Manhattan. It had to happen that way, even though I didn't plan it. Seems like the universe is doing that for all of us right now. It's like, okay, here's the extreme of this experience so that you can find that center place. Like, what is actually you? Who actually are you?
Exactly. Perfectly said. Absolutely. Great example. So there's the whole Mercury retrograde period has been a great time to consciously probe and gently question our perceptions of relationships, and to practice being present with our projections onto others, and heartfully explore, Virgo, inaccuracies in our version of reality, opposite Neptune. Mercury stations opposite Neptune retrograde, and it's a wonderful opportunity to devote ourselves to attuning our body-minds to the pulse of life. And there's other things, but I know that we've got a lot to cover. But basically, the out of bounds moon is in south declination, asking us to shore up our resilience by rooting in our own soil and heartfully, because this is the moon in Capricorn, and heartfully practice returning to our sovereignty over and over in the face of rapid changes and course corrections. So it's a good day for contemplative or spiritual practices that align spirit and matter, grounding practices, and lots of time to slow down. Mercury will be stationed, which could allow us more time to get out of our monkey minds, or it could be a consolidation of, if we're meditating, oh my God, this is how active my mind is, because it's like so obvious. But either way, it's a good practice to just allow what is and not participate in it, just allow.
All right. Wow. What an amazing week.
Yes.
And I just love the way you walked us through it. I just, every day has its own flavor. I feel there's the through line again is this change and being comfortable with it. But there's a lot of different ebbs and flows throughout the week. So I'll just do the quick summary of the things that we talked about, which I love this emphasis on the galactic center and the new moon on the super galactic center, which is not just our galactic center, but a galactic center even beyond our.
Yes, it's where our galaxy is being drawn to. Yes.
Wow.
A supermassive black hole.
This is one thing I love about Andrea's astrology is that she is what one might call a living sky astrologer. So she's actually taking the placements of the stars and planets beyond just what you might see in the chart or what you might be able to see on the sort of flat chart when you're running the aspects and actually making it alive with the placements of the planets and the stars. That might not be the best way to describe it, but that's the way I'm thinking about it. But it brings in another dimension of what's happening astrologically. Yeah. Okay. So I love the way you described retrogrades as letting ourselves catch up with ourselves. So this is where we're having this opportunity to kind of to see where our thought patterns and some of these things about us are stuck in the past. And where that needs to be refined and revised to catch up with where we're at now, which we've changed, but we could still have some thought forms and habits and patterns that are old. Yes. And so retrograde is this opportunity to see those more clearly. Yeah. Okay. So this is a time where we're seeing how we project out of ourselves. We need to be able to stretch into polarization so we can come back into center. This is a time to allow ourselves allow tension to show up where we're gripping. So we're going to start to see where we're gripping on to things that we don't want to change. And like you said several times, we don't have to like it, but being aware of it and allowing it and doing it anyways is part of the invitation of right now. Okay. You also said to presence gripping. I liked this terminology, presence gripping, meaning become aware of it, bring ourselves into it, feel it, so we can transmute it and find a new life force from it. So if we can presence it, if we can feel it, then we can actually unlock more of our own energy. And then you said to remember that maybe the discomfort is your teacher. So maybe this discomfort is here, just like my back. It's definitely a very loud, powerful teacher right now. So paying attention to the discomfort and recognizing that it is your teacher. Okay. On Monday, this is an opportunity to turn some of the things that maybe we've believed into faith. And would you also say sort of a level of knowing?
It can be. So there's knowing and then there's gnosis. So we can get more insights around things, but it's still too premature at that point because we're literally, it's the transition period of Jupiter from morning star to evening star. So we're still in this very liminal space. And so that's, yeah.
Okay. All right. So we're not quite at knowing or gnosis. We're in the transition.
Receiving it. Yes.
Yes. And we're getting closer. We're more in faith.
Yes.
Okay. On Tuesday, that we may see the perpetuation of divisiveness where we don't want to take responsibility. So you may find yourself blaming someone outside of yourself or blaming a situation or seeing something as separate because you're not willing yet to take responsibility for that thing fully and completely. And also there may be a tendency to manipulate in order to avoid vulnerability. So where are you trying to control and strategize and manipulate a situation because you don't want to expose yourself to a potential risk, or you feel afraid that, you might be exposed to risk.
Right.
Yeah. On Wednesday, this is an opportunity to stand in truth versus pushing against something. It's just standing in truth and being very discerning about how we use our energy. Where are you giving up too soon on something?
Mm-hmm.
On and then there's slight adjustments that need to be made, and maybe there's just a softening and a rethinking instead of a total throw the baby out with the bathwater moment.
Right.
On Thursday, I love that you brought in that series is the co-ruler of Virgo. I had not heard that before, or if I heard it, I forgot. So it's an interesting perspective. And this is an opportunity to relinquish expectations. Where are you worrying about the future? And it's an initiatory moment. So where are there things that you need to let go of in order to step into something new? Where are you holding on to something small? And where can letting that go in order or enable you to step into something bigger? Friday, beginnings and endings. Receptivity is an active choice. So remembering that you might need to actually choose to receive versus feeling like you know already and there's nothing else to receive. On Saturday, this is an opportunity to curb the excesses of ego that may result from a trine. I loved that too. The sesqui-square, is that what you said?
Square, yes.
Yeah, so good. This could result in things that feel embarrassing. There's someone in my life that I'm like, are you ever embarrassed? I don't think you're ever, I've never seen you embarrassed. It seems like some people are more inclined towards embarrassment, but I like what you pulled out about this, that it's from any hubris. Any hubris or like, feeling really big on oneself that may come from things being easy or seeming like they just flow. Yeah. You also said to watch reactions that you may regret later in social situations. So things that, again, are these like perpetuations of the past in social situations. So just be aware of that. And then on Sunday, the past and the future are morphing. And there's an opportunity to consciously probe your perception of relationships. Where do you have inaccurate perceptions? And this invitation to return to sovereignty over and over and over.
Yes.
Okay, so that's my like super in a nutshell. So many other things were said. Is there anything that you'd want to add or anything that I didn't say quite right that you'd want to?
You said everything beautifully. It's just, I was struggling with putting this together because it's hard for me to piece out day to day.
Yeah.
I'm such a big picture person.
Right.
I also have a lot of like going into, but any of these things could be good on any given day to work
it's
on.
True.
But mostly it's the theme of, and again, I apologize, but I can't help but see this as the beginning of this whole new 3-month period. So it's like this whole, we're really, really undergoing these initiations. You said back perfectly what I said. And again, I was struggling as someone who works with people from the perspective of wanting to hold them in places where it's not comfortable. That's my juice. That's my mojo, because I work on that myself in my daily practice so that I can be someone who can be in a space for somebody to go into these transformational processes. So if my overemphasis is on that, it's because I want to empower people to find their power in staying in whatever's happening, no matter what. That's what ultimately I would say life is showing us generally now, but this week specifically, these little things. Again, your recap was perfect, Amanda. Thank you. Yeah.
But I like this emphasis that you're bringing us back to, because you started here in the beginning, and this is the idea of the eye of the storm, the idea of accelerated change, the idea of using this week to explore where is your center, where is your power, even in the face of discomfort. So bringing back to your acting example, you were able to find your center by actually facing that fear, by like feeling all the things that happened in your body when you were in that really uncomfortable situation. That's where you were able to find an even deeper sense of who you are. My guess is you're even more confident and more empowered as a result of that experience.
Yes.
So this week, so this week we may find ourselves in situations where it's like, okay, oh, whoa, I feel my heart beating. I want to run away. I don't want to face this. I don't want to be here. But how can I stay here? And in staying here, find more of my strength, more of my life force, more of my authenticity, and then move forward.
Yes. And it's going to take time. It's incremental. Yes. It's not going to be immediately we get our mojo back. It's like, but we have to keep risking. And that's the faith piece. Risking in the dark until it becomes a habit, until it's just something that's more natural. Yeah.
It is incremental though. You know what I'm saying? Like every time we do it, it gets easier and easier and easier. So I think, really great reminders for us all. And I know a lot of astrologers are talking about this acceleration of the energy right now, the acceleration of the change. So yes, thank you for bringing that in. If you love Andrea and Michelle as much as we do at Astrology Hub, then I highly recommend that you get on our wait list for Astrologer Connect, which is our new reading platform, which is where you can find Andrea, Michelle, and many other astrologers that you love that you meet here on this platform, and either schedule booked readings with them, or if there's questions that come up in your life, you can actually reach out to them for instant readings. This is in beta or in pilot right now with our inner circle members only. So it's not available to everybody yet, but it will be available in December. So if you want to get on the wait list now, you can do that. It's astrologyhub.com/connect. And it's just making it really easy for you to find some of the best astrologers in the world and making it easy for you to book with them and get your personal questions answered. So this is very exciting for all of us. We've been working so hard on it. And you can access the waitlist right now. And Inner Circle members, you have this is the last week of the September beta test. So if you want to jump in and experience that, you still can. And you would find all that information in an email from us and or in Mighty Networks in our private community. Andrea, thank you so much for being here with us. It's been such a pleasure. Love this every single time with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks to all of you for being here. Thank you so much for being a part of our community. And thank you, as always, for making astrology a part of your life. We'll catch you on the next episode.